All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the pre-Purim Torah studies. Yeah, Purim is one of the more exciting holidays. We all get excited. The celebrations, the party of the year here at Chabad Sheepshead Bay. If you didn't register yet, make sure. Baku Palace. And and we're running out of space. That's filling up quickly. So make sure to register ASAP. Now, it's a holiday the children love, adults love. We get dressed, say l'chaim, we dance, we rejoice. But we know Purim, I'm sure you're aware, Purim has a lot of deep meanings and a lot of we can address the holiday of Purim from many different ways and learn different lessons from the holiday of Purim. But first, let's just review a little bit of the basic things we need to know, what we need to do. First of all, this Shabbos, before the Shabbos, first of all, we have the Purim is coming out on Sunday, right? Saturday night it begins. And because usually the day before Purim, which is the 13th day of Adar, is a fast day, the fast of Esther. Now, being that this year the 13th is on Shabbos, and on Shabbos we don't fast, so we fast instead on Thursday. Thursday morning, we start the fast, and we fast. You can look up the times. I don't have it in front of me. Chabad.org. You can look it up. And so we fast on Thursday. And this is the fast of Esther, because in the time when the Jews fought the war, and that day, this was the war where they were fighting, and they won. And on that day, the people were praying for those who were fighting, and they were fasting. And on this day also, we have the custom to give the half a shekel. Half a shekel is the custom that we give half a silver dollar. So here you can come 1:30 in the shul. We have mincha on Thursday, and we're going to have the half a shekel that you give on that day. Now on Shabbos, we have the special mitzvah of reading the Torah, the Torah, the portion of Zachor, remembering what Amalek did to us. It's connected with the holiday of Purim because Haman was a descendant of Amalek, and he tried to do exactly what Amalek wanted to do, to eliminate the Jewish people. And Baruch Hashem, things turned around. So we have a commandment in the Torah, a biblical commandment, to remember what Amalek wanted to do for us. There is, of course, the spiritual meaning behind it, and for that you have to come to shul Shabbos, 9 o'clock in the morning, to have the Chassidus explanation about what is the concept of Zachor, remembering, what is the remembering of Amalek. So this is on Shabbos. Then we have Saturday night. Saturday night after Shabbos is over, that's when we get together, we pray, and we read the Megillah, and that's when Purim begins. And on Purim, we have 4 mitzvahs, 4 commandments we need to do. And those are the 4 M's. M's for mitzvah. So we have the M of Megillah. We've got to read the Megillah at night and during the day. We have the M for money, or matanot le'avyanim, which is giving charity to the poor. You need to give at least to 2 poor Jewish people to give charity. And on the day of Purim, if you don't know anyone, you can give it to me, and I'll give it to an organization that helps feed poor families. And the third M is the Mishloach Manot, which is giving gifts for a friend, gifts of food. So you need to give at least 2 edible foods to to one, at least to one friend. One man gives to a Jewish man, a woman gives to a woman. And the fourth mitzvah is the mishte v'simcha, the meal, the feast of Purim, which we have a mitzvah to feast on Purim. In addition, there is also the concept of making l'chaim and adelo yada, drinking, which is also a separate discussion. We're not going into this today, but those are the mitzvahs of Purim that we have to remember. And now we're going to go to the topic of tonight's class. We're talking about when ordinary is extraordinary, finding meaning, purpose, and wonder in everyday moments. So we go through life, and it seems like the vast majority of the time that we spend during the day seems very trivial. We're doing things. We want to have a nice meal, so we work for 2 hours. Maybe it's more than 2 hours. We have to go shop. We have to get the food. We have to get all the ingredients, and then we work, and we eat the meal for 20 minutes. We finish the meal. So it seems like all those things that are leading up, they're just things that you have to do it. In life, you can find many things. There's those moments that are important to you. Everyone has things that are important to them. Is it reading and studying? Is it spending time with the children? Whatever you have, you feel those are the moments that you live for. But the rest of the things you do because you have no choice. You just go through life. And here we'll learn in today's lesson how the ordinary, the things that seem so ordinary, really become extraordinary. So there's a reading from William Martin that talks about this. Let's see inside. Okay, so it says, do not ask your children to strive for extraordinary lives. Such striving may seem admirable, but it is the way of foolishness. Help them instead to find the wonder and the marvel of an ordinary life. Show them the joy of tasting tomatoes, apples, and pears. Show them how to cry when pets and people die. Show them the infinite pleasure in the touch of a hand. And make the ordinary come alive to them. The extraordinary will take care of itself, which is very wise words, but today we're going to take this a little further. We're going to delve a little deeper and look at those moments and those events from a spiritual perspective. How, from a spiritual perspective, we're able to transform, to take those ordinary moments and realize what lies in them. So, we're talking about the holiday of Purim. Now, about the holiday of Purim, we have something very interesting. So we just mentioned about all the laws of Purim, Saturday night. It begins Purim, which is the 14th day of Adar. But you may know that there is more than one day for Purim. We have Purim in Jerusalem, in cities that are surrounded by walls from the time of Yehoshua. There, they celebrate on the 15th day of Adar. This is the place where I come from. I was born in Yerushalayim and grew up there, and that's where we celebrated. So the rest of the land, the rest of Eretz Israel, they celebrated on the 14th day of Adar. And it happens to be that I managed to celebrate both. Why? Because as a Lubavitcher Chassid, the Rebbe always sends the young boys, the young people, to go out and bring the holiday of Purim. Don't keep it to yourself. Bring it to the other Jews who don't have a chance to celebrate it. So we used to go out and used to go to the army bases. We used to travel on the 14th day of Adar. We used to travel to all those army bases in the Jordan Valley, everywhere to bring the holiday for the soldiers, to read the Megillah for them, to give them Mishlach Manat, and to dance with them, celebrate with them. That was beautiful. And then when we finished that, we came back to Yerushalayim. And when we came back to Jerusalem, that's when the Purim began over there. So we had the double celebration of Purim. But what you may not know is that the holiday of Purim really extends to more days than that. We're going to read from the Mishnah that tells us that the Megillah, reading of the Megillah, really, in certain cases, you can read it starting from the 11th day of Adar. So we're going to read inside and then explain what it is. So the Mishnah says as follows. The Megillah can be read on the 11th of Adar, on the 12th of Adar, the 13th of Adar, and the 15th, and the 14th on the 15th, not earlier and not later. Cities, then explain, cities that were surrounded by walls since the days of Joshua, the son of Nun, Yeshua ben Nun, they read the Megillah on the 15th. Now, why is that? Why do they read the Megillah on the 15th? And again, in villages and unwalled cities, read on the 14th. Okay? So what happened then, when we celebrate Purim for the miracle, what happened that the Haman wanted to destroy the Jews on the 13th day of Adar. And with all of the miracles, Hashem came, and Achashverosh with Esther being the queen, Mordechai praying, and together they reversed the decree and they said that the Jews are able to defend themselves. And indeed they defended themselves on the 13th day of Adar, and miraculously there was not a single Jew that died in that war throughout all the countries. And the enemy was defeated, and that was in the 13th day of Adar. And all of those cities, they rested on the 14th, and that is when they established the holiday on the 14th, the day that they rested. Now, in the city of Shushan, the capital, Esther asked for another day of fighting, another day of war. There shouldn't be a ceasefire for another day until they eliminate completely the Hamas, the Amalek, the Haman and the children. So on that day, in Shushan, they fought another day. So they rested on the 15th day. That is why in Shushan, they made it that in Shushan they should be celebrated Purim on the 15th. And being that they wanted to give the respect to connect it with the celebrations in Israel, in the Holy Land, and therefore they said that any city like Shushan that was surrounded by walls from the time of Yeshua, there they would celebrate on the 15th day. Okay, so this is quite simple. Now, villages and unwalled cities, read it on the 14th. However, villagers advance their reading to the earlier market day. How so? If the 14th falls on Monday, the Megillah is read on that day. In the villages, an unwalled city, and on the next day in a walled city. If the 14th falls on Tuesday or Wednesday, the Megillah is read on the previous market day, Monday, in villages, and on that day in large cities, and on the following day in the walled cities. If the 14th day falls on Thursday, the Megillah is read on that day in villages and unwalled city, and on the next day in walled cities. If the 14th falls on Friday, the Megillah is read on the previous market day, which is Thursday, in villages, and on that day in unwalled cities, and on the following day in walled cities. Okay, sounds a little confusing, right? Very simple. Basically, what happened? We're talking about the villages, the remote villagers. They could not read by themselves. Either they couldn't read the Megillah by themselves. They had to come to the city to read the Megillah. Now, being that they came to the city on the market day, when was the market day? Monday and Thursday. So our sages established, and they said not to make them travel twice on the market day and then come back on Purim to hear the Megillah. So they made a special rule that they can read the Megillah on the market day before the Purim. So now, so these days that was established for them is something very special and very unique. In fact, the sages of the Great Assembly, they established that day to begin with. When they established the Purim, that's the holiday of Purim, which we know the holiday of Purim is obviously not a biblical holiday. It began only between the first and the second temple. That is when the story occurred. The Bible was before. But when I say not biblical holiday, meaning from the Torah. But this was a holiday that was established by the sages of that generation. And they established to begin with that they would have those days, those unique extra days for the villagers who come to the city, that they should be able to read the Megillah starting from the 11th day of Adar. Okay? So Purim was also celebrated in the 11th, 12th, and 13th of Adar. This accommodated villagers who visited cities on the market days to hear the Megillah, eliminating the need for them to make a separate trip. And that is what the Talmud tells us, that all these dates were established by the men of the Great Assembly when the festival of Purim was first established. Had they instituted Purim only on the 14th and 15th of Adar, the sages of later generations would not have been permitted to add those dates. Why not? For the law states that a court may not uproot the ruling of a previous court unless they are greater in wisdom or number. It is thus obvious that all these were originally established by the men of the Great Assembly. Where is it implied in the book of Esther? So the men of the Great Assembly, which was the sages that came back and built the second temple, and they established all of the days to be celebrated as Purim, or at least to read the Megillah. So where is it implied in the book of Esther, in the scroll of Esther that we read? So Rabbi Shemesh, the son of Abba, said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that it says in the Megillah Esther, Lekayem et Yemei Apurim ha'ele bizmanehem, to observe these days of Purim in their times. So that says that that indicates the fact that to begin with, they established more than one time. They established many times where they could read the Megillah. This also is remains a halacha, a law, even to this day, even though it's not something that we should rely on. It says if someone has to go on a journey, whatever reason, and he knows he's not going to be able to read the Megillah on Purim day, then even today, before he goes, he should read the Megillah starting from the 11th day without a bracha. So those who have embarked upon a sea, it says in Shulchan Aruch, upon a sea voyage, or joined a caravan to cross the desert on the 14th of Adar, and do not have a Megillah to take along, should read the Megillah on the 13th, the 12th, or the 11th. However, they should omit the blessing that are customarily recited before the reading. So the question is, why? This is something which is very unusual to a Jewish holiday. We have our holidays, we have set dates. We have Pesach, 15th of Nisan, Shavuot, Sukkot, every holiday has its set dates. Why on Purim do they make the established dates more than one day? You can make that celebrate the Read Megillah before. We do find things on Pesach, for example, we find makeup dates, right? If you didn't do the Pesach, we all know the law of Pesach Sheni. It is the second Passover. You can make it up a month later that the Torah added. But number one, that's not what they do today. Here, they have many days. And it's not a day to make up later. Is to begin with, they establish the days of Purim that you can read before the day of the actual day of Purim. So that's the question, why? So to understand why Purim is the only Jewish holiday that was instituted with multiple days, we have to go back a little bit and see there's a number of interesting facts about Purim that are they're full of surprises. We're going to focus on a few things that they start in one way and they end up a completely different way. For example, the very fact of making the holiday. Our sages didn't want to make the holiday of Purim. It was Esther that was asking the people. She sent a message to the Chachamim, to the sages, and she asked them, set the day, establish my festival for generations, for posterity. So they didn't want to have the holiday to the first place. They were asking, what are you going to do? We're going to make a holiday now? Now keep in mind, they were under the rules of the Goyim, of the Persians. They said that they're going to hate us. We're making now holidays. Let's see it inside. Okay, so here's the question. Why did the sages, in an exception to Jewish practice, choose to establish multiple original dates for this festival instead of simply adding makeup dates? So here it is. Esther sent word to the sages and said to them, establish my festival for posterity. The sages send word to Esther. It would provoke the ire of the nations against us. But Esther sent word to them in return. I am already written up in the royal annals of Media and Persia. They said, I'm there already. So because it's there, it's no problem. So you would think that this is okay. So they agreed, let's make a holiday, fine. So they made a holiday. They agreed to her and they made the holiday. What ends up that this holiday that the sages didn't want to do in the first place, and Esther asked them to do it, it ends up that our sages say that this holiday is the only holiday that is not going to be nullified when Mashiach comes. As we see in the next text, that says, in the Medrash says, Yalka Chimaini, all the festivals will become null in the Messianic era, but the days of Purim will never be annulled. So here's the crazy thing. This is just a holiday that was established because they didn't even want to have it. And yet, when it was established, and they say all the holidays will become null, and Purim will stay forever. What does that mean? First of all, obviously, it doesn't mean that we're going to stop celebrating Pesach, or Shavuos, or Sukkot, or Rosh Hashanah. Of course, we're going to celebrate them. What that means is that on the day of Mashiach, we actually learned today in Tanya, that in the days of Mashiach, there's going to be such a great godly revelation. V'rou kol basar yachtav, the flesh eyes will be able to appreciate godliness. So, what is special about a holiday, it's not just the eating the hamantaschen and eating Pesach, the matzah and the matzah balls. It is obviously the holiday represents a very high spiritual revelation. Every holiday comes with its special spiritual revelation. But in the days of Mashiach, when the godly light will shine, it will outshine the light of the holidays. This is what it means the holidays will be annulled. That every day, the ordinary day will become an extraordinary day. But Purim will outshine, will shine, will be visible even in the days of Mashiach. That's how special Purim is. So that we see something great, something unique about the holiday of Purim, what this does. Why? We'll talk about it. What's so special about it? That's what we want to say. That's what we want to look into. Something similar is also with the fact that the very book of Megillas Esther, the book of Esther that we read in Purim, that book is, of course, one of the 24 scrolls of the Torah, of the part of the Tanakh, part of the Bible. But that wasn't so simple. Esther asked them to write the story and to become a book in the Torah. The Chachamim objected. The sages objected. And they said that it says that a story, they read from a verse in Mishlei that says a story can be written only 3 times, not more than 3 times. Now the story of Amalek, where Amalek came and fought the Jews, which is the story of Purim also, because this is Haman, was part of Amalek. That was already written 3 times, and you want to write it a 4th time? We cannot do it. Let's see inside. So Esther wanted the sages to incorporate the Purim story into the Torah. They hesitated due to the multiple mentions of Jewish victories over the Amalekites, and agreed once they realized it was only mentioned twice in the Tanakh, not 3 times. Why is that? Let's see first of all the text, what it says, the Talmud says. The Talmud says, Esther sent word to the sages, write me up for posterity. I want the story should become part of the Torah. The sages sent back in response, it is written, indeed I wrote for you in 3 parts. It's a verse in Proverbs, in Mishlei. In the Torah, a story may appear 3 times, but not 4 times. So where is the story of Amalek mentioned in the Torah? It is mentioned in Beshalach, in the book of Shmois. Talks about the whole story, what happened with Amalek when the Jews came out of Egypt. It is mentioned a second time in Deuteronomy, Parshas Kiseitze, and it is mentioned a third time in the book of Shmuel, when the story with Shaul fought the Amalekites. So that's what they said. It's written already 3 times. But they came then to a conclusion that it's written only 2 times, because the book of Deuteronomy is not telling the story, just a reference to what we read in the book of Shmois. So that is why it's okay, and you can write it. But what happened after they agreed to write this book of Esther? Once again, we see something amazing. That book that was not supposed to be written, the Chachamim objected to write it in the first time, ended up to be a book that shines. It is compared to the 5 books of Moses, which will not be nullified, meaning their importance will not be nullified as even in the time of Mashiach. That's what the Maimonides says. All the books of the prophets and the Ksuvim will be nullified in the Messianic era, except for the book of Esther. It will endure like the 5 books of Moses, and like the oral laws that were transmitted by Moses, they will never become null. So again, there's another thing. They didn't want to write it, and ends up to be even in a greater level. And finally, one more thing I want to mention is about the very name of Purim. We read a Maimah these days on Shabbos about the name Purim. Why is the name Purim called Purim? What does Purim mean? Purim comes from the word pur. Pur means a lottery. In what language? In the ancient Persian language. It is talking about the lottery that Haman cast. He wanted to choose a day or a date when to annihilate the Jews. And it came out in the month of Adar, and he was very happy, and he said, month of Adar, Moses died in that month. He didn't know that Moses was also born in that month. So they named the holiday Purim because of that lottery. And why? Why would you name it after the lottery that Haman casted? And there's a whole explanation. What it means. What is the concept of a lottery? A lottery is when you say that there are certain things that I cannot decide based on my logic. Certain things I have to live for destiny, things that I have to live for something which is above logic. Haman was a very learned person. He knew the history of the Jews. He knew the Kabbalistic things about the Jews. And he figured, if I'm going to go rationally, I will not be able to convince God to eliminate the Jews. But if I take a lottery, I go beyond logic. There it says, Jews, non-Jews, they're all the same. He didn't count on something else. The lottery, the place where Haman wanted to lead, was to a certain degree. The lottery turned to a goral, turned to the Hebrew lottery. The goral, like the goral that we have on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, there is also a lottery. And the two goats, they cast the lottery. One goes to be offered as a sacrifice. The other one goes to Azazel, goes to the cliff, being thrown off the cliff. The lottery represents as something, a very, very deep connection that Hashem has with the Jewish people. And that was awoken within the Jew, a deeper connection. This was through the Mesiras Nefesh, through the standing without logic, self-sacrifice. They were ready to die for Hashem. Because at that time, Haman made a decree to kill all the Jews in one day. And he had a plan that was planned very well. Achashverosh was ruling all the entire region wherever Jews lived. And the decree was that in every town, the local government, the local people should kill all the Jews in that town. And they gave time for about 12 months. The Jews were able to say, okay, that's it. I quit. No more Jewish. Not a single one said that. They stood with Mesiras Nefesh. That brought out the deeper connection that they have with Hashem. And this is represented by the Purim. That something totally from the negative, from the Persian, the ancient pagan Persian language, Purim, turned into something that saved their lives. So this is something we see here. Let's see inside. This is from the Alter Rebbe. He says, TORAH, the result of a lottery appeared to be random, not rooted in reason. However, in truth, lotteries are determined by God in a manner that transcends all reason. Where you follow reason, you are free to make intellectual choices. When you throw lots, you suspend intelligent choice and place yourself at the mercy of the lottery, even if the result defy reason. This means that you throw your lot in with the divine supernal will that transcends reason. Therefore, they call these days Purim, a congregate of Pur, which means Goral, a lottery. Haman's Pur, an attempt to co-opt God's blessing in defiance of all reasons through a lottery, failed. God's transcendental will did not defy reason in support of the impure Haman. Rather, it supported the Jews who merited it through their utter self-abnegation, jeopardizing their lives for the one God. The primary joy of Purim is that Haman's Pur dissolved and the transcendental divine will focused exclusively on the Jews. So here we have it. These are the three examples that we have. Three aspects of Purim, all seemingly lacked significance, yet it turned out to be the most extraordinary and holy. Starting with the date. The date, our sages had no intention of transforming the 13th of Adar into a joyous Jewish festival. And what happened? It ended up making 5 days special. The Megillah. The sages doubted whether the book should be written down as part of the Tanakh, of the Bible, and ended up being the one like the Torah, not just the regular one. And in the third example we gave is the name of Purim. The Persian name would have implied a lack of divine intervention, and ended up being the name that reveals the essence of God, the connection that the Jew has with God. Taking this to the next step, the Rebbe explains how this concept is related to the 3 dates, which is 5 dates, but basically there are 3, as we will explain in a second, that the holiday of Purim is celebrated. As you remember, we said you have the dates, the 15th day of Adar is celebrated in the walled cities. You have the day of the 14th day of Adar that is celebrated in the unwalled cities, the open cities. Then you have 3 more days, the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th, which was established for the villagers, those who live in the villages far away and they come to the cities. They should be able to read the Megillah even in those days. So the Rebbe explains, when you think about what is the meaning of these 3 categories, what do these represent? What is a walled city? A walled city is a place where the high society lives in. It's protected. They have no worries. They have peace. And you have the treasures there. You have the government sitting there in the walled cities, protected, without any worries. Then you have the big cities, the unwalled cities. Those are places that you have the factories. People take material and they prepare, they make furniture, they make clothing, and they bring to the people in the cities, in the walled cities. Then you have the people in the far remote villages. The far remote villages, those are people that are not sophisticated, simple people, but very strong, different, honest, straightforward people. And they are farming, they are planting, they are growing, and they bring the material, the food to sustain for the unwalled cities and to the walled cities to be able to make everything they need to make to survive. So here's from a description. What this means: cities are far from self-sufficient. However, and all depended upon close relationship with the rural communities in their hinterlands. Renaissance Florence established such greatness in part because of the auspicious relations it maintained with the sharecroppers in the Tucson countryside, who provided the urban elite with a secure food supply, as well as with grain, oil, and wine, which the Florentine elite in turn sold or traded throughout Europe. Now, this is in the simple meaning. These are the simple people, the salt of the earth, people who are devoted, but they have not sophisticated. And the Rebbe comes and the Rebbe explains that there is also a spiritual element to these 3 categories. And the Rebbe says, the walled city represents those people who are strong, they are protected spiritually. And their things to do is to contemplate in greatness of Hashem, focusing on God, and doing the holy things that they need to do. The unwalled cities are the people who are not as sophisticated as people in the city, but they work with the material that they have. Emotionally, they're connected with Hashem. They have the challenges, they overcome the challenges. And then you have the third category. Third category are the villagers, the people from far places, people that they don't feel that they have anything, they don't consider themselves important, but yet they have this strong, firm commitment. They need to do. They're honest people. They're doing the working. They're taking the earth and turning the earth into something that grows. Those are talking about the simple folks. Says the Rebbe. People who live in walled cities can devote themselves completely to God. Their spiritual disposition is like an enclosed fortress that shields them from the unsavory influences of temptations. The spiritual task of the people in the outlying cities, is to be surrounded by worldly temptations and nevertheless use these worldly resources for holy purposes. Thus, they create a city, a home for God. They don't need to plow, plant, and wait until crops grow. They just take the pre-prepared, ready-made resources and turn them into a home, a city for God. And then you have the villagers. The villagers must plow and soften the hardened soil, the corporal world, where God is not visible, to make it sprout and grow. These are the three categories. So that's what you have. You have these three categories in the material differences and the spiritual differences. The walled city, you have materially, it's safe, worry-free, stronghold. And the spiritual difference is it is secure and spiritual lifestyle focused on prayer and study. The unwalled city represents, in material sense, it provides a capital with necessities, but remains separated. In spiritual differences, it is involved in worldly matters, yet maintains a deep connection to God. And finally, the villagers' material differences, they simple and honest lifestyle of growing crops and feeding the populations, which in spiritual meaning, it means that it perceives themselves as simple, but they are loyal soldiers of God's army. Says the Rebbe, this level of the villagers do not have a keen perception of God. They don't relate to God intellectually or emotionally. The relationship is marked primarily by obedience. Nevertheless, their self-abnegation is complete. In fact, the surrender to God, driven by simple loyalty, is greater and deeper in some ways than the surrender of those who enjoy a rich intellectual or emotional relationship with God. You see, this is why, says the Rebbe, these people, we ask the question, why the focus? Why is Purim a day that is different than all other holidays? It makes other days, not just one day makes it a holiday, makes many days a holiday. It is because that's the power of Purim. Purim represents the one on the bottom that reaches the point of self-sacrifice without any understanding. Just because I'm a Jew, I'm going to do it. No logic, not even feeling openly emotion. Just, I know it, deep inside, I know it. This is why the extra days of the 11th day, the 12th day, the 13th day, that was added to the holiday of Purim was added because of whom? Because of those villagers, those simple folks, that they do things out of the soul, out of the heart. And this gives us a really an important lesson in life. We asked in the beginning, what do we do about the regular moments in our lives? Yes, we rush life to go to the goals. We walk the street because we need to get to a destination. Instead of walking the street just to get to the destination, you can walk and enjoy the walk and appreciate the walk that you do. Appreciate every moment that you have and use it out for Hashem. Just like the days, the mundane days was turned into the holiday of Purim and it extended to more days. You go to a game, you go to a baseball game. Use it out in a proper way. Keep your language clean. Speak to a friend, talk to him. You have a barbecue in your backyard. Invite some people. Yeah, you're doing things like this, but invite them and get them, make a brachas with them on the food. Say a Dvar Torah, talk something interesting from the Torah. Using out the mundane days to turn into the holiday. That's the idea of Purim. Turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. There's a nice story that the Rebbe brings in the Yom Yom. In terms of scholarship and aptitude, the Chassid Reb Elie Abeler was a simple man. Once, when he had a private audience with my grandfather, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Schneerson, the Tzemach Tzedek, my grandfather said to him, Elia, I envy you. You travel to various fairs, you meet many people. Sometimes during a business transaction, you get into a warm discussion about a Jewish aphorism, a Talmudic moral, etc. And you arouse that person's interest in studying the exoteric and esoteric dimensions of the Torah. This, says the Tzemach Tzedek the rebellion, this causes joy on high, and God pays you a commission with the blessings of children, health, and sustenance. The larger the fair, the more work there is, and the greater the commission earned. So here it is. The answer is, how can we transform the monotony of our daily grind, imbuing the ordinary moments with profound meanings? The trick is to pause for a moment before beginning our activity, to consider how to infuse what we are about to do with holiness. Everything we do can be laced with holiness if we give it a chance. And why did the sages, in an exception to Jewish practice, choose to establish multiple original dates for this festival instead of simply adding makeup dates? Because Purim transforms multiple ordinary days into festive days, because it is a holiday that reveals the secret of the divine in all things. The holiest energies are found in the most ordinary things. So this is why we celebrate this holiday of Purim. This is why this simple day, they say Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the year, is Yom Kippurim, which means it's like Purim. Because on Purim, we have this ability to connect to Hashem from the simplest ways, from the lowest places within ourselves. We find ways to make it extraordinary. But of course, we shouldn't be satisfied with just taking the extraordinary, the ordinary things and turn it extraordinary, but also just simple to add more in studying the Torah, doing the mitzvahs. That story with Reb Elia Beller, the end of that story, as we said, he was a simple person, didn't know much, when he ended up hiring a tutor, a teacher, to teach him Torah. And he started learning more. And as simple as he was able to establish, to grow in Judaism and in knowledge of Torah. And not only that, he shared this story with many other of his friends, and they all started copying them. So you don't know that what you can accomplish by saying one thing to a friend in a positive way, in an encouraging way, in a loving way. Let's do it. Let's make another shir, another 5 minutes of studying, another tefillin putting on. Those are the things that make it. So, B'ezrat Hashem, we should all have a happy Purim, and a Purim, it should be Ad Lo Yada. It should be a complete victory to our people. As it says, Purim is the special day when we can turn things around, and that means that the coming of Mashiach should be very soon. Amen. Thank you all for joining.
Beautiful, beautiful class, Rabbi. Really.
Thank you.
Very good class, Rabbi.
Stewie, I'm very happy you stayed and listened. Thank you.
Yeah, because I'm coming.